Welcome to the Coach Cameron Podcast, Drive Home Edition, brought to you by botsguy.com. Go visit it, purchase it. Let me know you purchased it and use it for your company, and let me know if it's good so I know if I should buy it, because I'm not willing to pay the money for it. I don't even know how much it costs, but go to botsguy.com, find out yourself. Botsguy.com. Get an AI today. I had a question from a listener, and I thought it was a pretty good one. There's a transition with their team. They're going to go from 9v9 to 11v11 eventually, and they're trying to figure out, do we go up an age group right away and do it now or do it later? They're concerned about touches, overall touches, and there's a heavy dropout rate with kids in soccer as they get a little bit older. You know, when they're getting about 12, 13 years old, they don't want to do it anymore, and potentially has something to do with the transition from 9v9 to 11v11, where it's more running up and back, and they're not touching the ball, and that's what they enjoy to do. There's a lot of fear when you go into 11v11. So here's my thoughts on it. I remember my fears of going from 9v9 to 11v11 was, one, it is a much bigger field. It's a strange transition when you deal with it for the first time. And my fear was always, do I have enough players to make this work? You know, because now you got to have enough. But I don't think that's your situation. I think getting touches in an 11v11 game, it should be a lot. It's going to be less than a 9v9 on a smaller field, obviously, but you can learn by doing more of that. So do 11v11 and 9v9, 2 leagues, one in your age group and one above age group. I think more play the better, but style play is everything, and the environment is everything. So if your kid, this is why they'll quit. If your kid is not touching the ball and you start measuring it, and I would record everything my child did, and I always did. That's how I communicated with my son Jack, and that's how I influenced his playing ability from defending everything. I would show him the data. Like on the drive home, mine was like, here's your data. This is how many takeaways you got. This is how many takeaway assists you got. This is how many times you pass the ball forward, backwards, how many success rates. I did all that. That's how I influenced my son to defend better, because he wouldn't defend. He would like to have the ball, and he did great with the ball and finding the open pass, but he wouldn't defend. So I actually did data on him and another player who works hard and defends hard, and basically showed him the difference. I'm like, he's better than you. Look at his numbers. And then so he was competing with him, and he changed the way he defended simply by numbers. So numbers matter. And if you're in an environment where the kids are scared to play because they're getting yelled at from the sideline or whatever it may be, and they're afraid to make mistakes in a game, yeah, that's a problem. That's not going to help things. So you have to be very careful on the expectations. You want a certain stress level of competition, but not so much stress where they get worse. That's why it's important to track everything. How long your child is on the field, who they're playing, how many touches did they get on the ball, how many passes did they make, which direction, how many touches did it take to make that pass, and if they were successful or not. How many takeaways did they get? How many takeaway assists? And takeaway assists is when they didn't get the takeaway, but they were there within a 5-yard radius of it, causing pressure. And that's a takeaway assist. So I have all that data. By the way, you can go to my podcast. If you search Coach Cameron Soccer Math, I have probably 8 or 9 videos talking about soccer math where I show the Excel spreadsheet of my son, who he played, how much time, and the whole thing. And it got longer and longer as far as categories of what I was trying to pay attention to and track. But back to, kind of the thoughts of, the worry of your kid getting worse because they're not touching the ball enough, and they're not having the same kind of love they would have in 9v9. It's all culture based, in my opinion, and what the expectations are. It's hard to get all the parents on the same page, saying, hey, we want to win. Let's be honest with it. We want our kids to be successful. We want our kids to go the highest level possible that's offered in soccer. That is clear. We all want that. But there has to be a way to elevate your child to the highest level they're capable of. There is, and it's all about stress management. So you want stress, but if you give too much stress and you create emotional triggers that cause players to repeat same performances of failure, you got a problem, and you have to get out of that mess. So it's very imperative to really have control on the sideline, because the kids want to win. They're going to cry over a loss just as much as they would after a loss from the sideline, losing their freaking minds. The sideline could be 100% supportive and just controlled and happy, joy. The kids are still going to have the pressure of winning, and they're going to want to win, and they have all that. It's just managing emotion. Our kids, you have to if you really want to have success for your kids, study the science of a brain, especially the male brain. So if you have a son that's playing, their brain is developed a lot later than girls. Their brain isn't fully formed till 25. So as it's developing, you can shape their brain to be a machine, or you're going to develop that brain to be weak, scared, all these other things. The human brain is fascinating. There's something with I learned, I don't want to cite anything, but just believe me in this thought here. I listened to this podcast about developing children and the importance of having a mother and father in the home. And it's not political. It's based on how important it is to have that nurture in the home, and then have that kind of hard discipline. They need that yin yang to really develop the brain. So if you think in terms of that your child has the nurturing side, and at the same time the stern side, to really develop a child's brain, it's very important. And do some research on it. It's very important. So if you have too much of raw, or too much like you got to win, blah blah blah, you're gonna really screw up their brain, and they're not going to develop right. But if you have it where it's nurturing, where it's okay to make mistakes, at the same time have that kind of discipline of like, yeah, mistakes are fine, but let's be a little more disciplined how we arrive to the field. And I mean, having respect for the game, and just have that discipline side to manage the whole soccer community within your team is very difficult, because there's no right answer. There's just the pursuit of how can we get the best out of our kids. And from my research, from my experience of running kids, a ton of kids, and even right now I'm struggling coaching my high school. It's managing the discipline of my team and not having enough nurturing side. I mean, it's every year I over nurture the team, and then this year I think I'm over disciplining the team. I mean, it's not easy to do. So, but into the spirit of your question of 9v9, 11v11, I really think it's management of the tactics involved, the focus on winning. We all want to win, and we're all going to try to win, but it's not the end all. It's how do we win over time? You have to spread it out and graph it out. How many games did they get in? How many touches Did they get in a real game environment, practice something different? But how many times were they in a stressful situation, they had success? And then eventually that stress load is going to be diminished to the point where they can escape pressure anytime. The best players in the world are those that can identify situations with their brain, see it, and then process the information coming from whether it's a sideline, the pressure of the defender, the referee that's involved, the playing surface, all that stuff. Processing all of that and making the right decision, whether to spin, turn, make a pass, or clear it out, whatever it is in the game. There's so many different opportunities of making a decision. It's endless. So you really got to manage the brain, because the brain is capable of crazy things. Like humans are amazing if they're allowed to be amazing. Now, who is amazing? Like, think about sport. Who are the craziest creative athletes in the world? And you look at, as far as sport goes, look at the BMXers, look at the skateboarders, the X Games, the things they can do with the skateboard and a bike and all that. Who are their coaches? They don't have any. Who are the best? I think they're starting to manage it, but they learn from each other. They learn from repetition of enjoyment, and their stress is just different because it's scary. And they get disciplined with broken bones. So there's something there that has to be created. So this is a long answer to the question that you have, and hopefully you can find some information from this, but manage your child based on math is my suggestion. And math is I would even record how many times your kid is yelled at, how many times your kids cried in a game, who was again. Map it all out and try to understand it and really research it and dive into the psychology of it. You got to be really careful how you communicate with your child or your player, because how you communicate with them, there's going to be manipulation from the brain, because the brain will produce hormones that will change how their perspective, their thought process, how they move, everything. The brain is a very interesting thing to really get into. So it's not a complete answer. You're not going to get an answer from, because I don't think there is an answer other than it's complicated and you got to be careful. Be careful. You need to do that. Jack, my son Jack, and I'm not saying I do the right things, but some of the things the one thing I did pay attention to is if I noticed my kids weren't having fun or there's too much stress at home, I pulled my kids out. I pulled out Dakota from club soccer for a year, and she just trained up 3 years and just did skill training and occasional games where she was allowed to play. She would guest play. She ended up playing Division I soccer at Seattle U. Jack, I pulled out for 1 or 2 years. I think 2 separate times. I would have double checked, but I pulled him out because it wasn't fun anymore, and I didn't want him to lose that. But we still trained. It was just different. If the stress is overload, get out. Get out, run. That's important. Take a break or whatever it needs to be, because burnout is a real thing. You don't want that. You are getting to that age with them. But I don't know. I don't know if this answers your question, because there's no right answer. I think mine's more right than most, but it's not an easy thing. You got to manage parents, coaches, players. It's all about managing, and that's what I've learned through my time is it's managing. Like at PC, I manage the coaches, I manage the players the best that I can, in hopes that we can all get on the same page to do some do great things. And I've shown it. I've shown it on my high school. I've shown it at my college. There's times where it's beautiful, and everyone just loves it. There's a huge high, but you got to manage that high. It's not easy. And it's a constant process, and that's why I like coaching, because there is no right answer, but you get close. You feel like you get close, and then then you're kicked in the face, you start over, and you keep trying to find it. That's why I like it, because it's like a Rubik's Cube that can't be solved, where sometimes you solve it and then someone kicks it and then you have to resolve it and start over. So anyways, hopefully that makes sense, and that concludes this long 15-minute podcast. Jeez Louise. Peace out.